Hello and welcome back to Moody Mayor Gaming. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're gonna have a riding lesson in the game Astride. Today's lesson is gonna be really basic. I wanted to kind of go over like terminology that you might come across in case you're not familiar with any of this or you want to participate in a more realistic like server, or if you know even if you play something like Star Stable online, you want to do a live show and you're not really sure what everyone's talking about and the instructions that you're getting when you're in the competition. So we're gonna go over is like what the gaits are that we have for the horses, what transitions are, how to know what command you're being given if you're told, you know, track left, track right, or get on the left rein, get on the right rein, things like that. So to start with, we're gonna go ahead and walk on in here and start going around on the rail. So when you hear that term on the rail, it means you are going to be out on the outer perimeter of the arena, closest to the rail or the fence that borders the arena. Sometimes it might not actually be a fence, it might be a wall if you're on an indoor arena, but it's still referred to as a rail. And the spacing is important. You don't want to be right up on the fence like this because, frankly, in real life, this is a rather risky position. If your horse gets a little spooked and they, you know, bump over into the fence, that can cause problems for you and them. Also, sometimes you may be having a little difficulty keeping your horse straight. They might be drifting a little bit and your leg does stick out a little further than their side. So they're not going to notice if they rub your leg up against the fence. And speaking from personal experience, not a fun time. So we want to keep maybe about a horse length, or sorry, not a length, a horse width. So like the width of this horse right here between you and the actual fence line or rail or wall. So you can stay about here when you want to be, quote, on the rail. Another term you might hear is go down the quarter line. That just means like a quarter of the way across the arena. You can think of dividing the arena into quarters. And so you would just kind of turn a little bit sooner. I'm kind of on the quarter line right now. You can see I'm much further away from the fence rail. And truly, this jump, if you'll take a look at where these poles, the red, yellow, and green, and then the blue jump right there, that's basically the quarter line going this direction or that direction for this arena. So you might hear that term. You might also hear center line. So center line just means the very middle of the arena. So it's basically where this entrance is. Most of the time, entrances to the arenas are in the center. We cannot go down the center line in this arena because there is an obstacle in the middle of the arena. But it just means a straight line down the middle of the arena. Now that we've gone over the positions on the rail, down the quarter line and down the center line, so you can kind of better acclimate and navigate the arena, we're going to talk about gaits and transitions. So a gait is the speed at which a horse is going, basically. There is some related details to that we'll go over later on, but for now we're just going to talk about the four main gaits, and they are the walk, trot, canter, and gallop. Now, this game, Astride, only recognizes three of them. You can see down at the bottom, it says walk. However, if we were to stop moving and halt, it does not change. It still thinks we're walking. That's probably going to be updated later on. But if a horse is at a standstill, we say they are at a halt. So if you want to move up into a walk, we're just going to go up into that. That's the next fastest gait from a dead stop. It's just a walk. So the next one up is called the trot, and they kind of bounce a little bit more. It's a little floaty than the walk is, obviously, because the horse is moving their legs in a different way. They're doing what we call suspending themselves off the ground, just a little bit more Some horses have really big trots and they may look like they're floating a bit longer, and others have, what we call a shorter trot, and they don't float as much. They don't, have as much what we call suspension. So that's a little extra details. We're not going to worry about that right now. Just know this is the trot and it's the second fastest gait. The next gait is the canter. And this is probably the one everybody is the most familiar with and also thinks would be the most fun, and they are correct. The canter is wonderful. However, there's a lot to do with the trot as well, but we can, for the sake of fun, we're just gonna pretend the canter is the best gait. Anyhow, so that is the third fastest gait. The next gait is a gallop. However, that's not really recognized in this game. I can get the horse into a gallop, but it's not going to change that little indicator down at the bottom that labels the speed you're going or the gait that you're going. Right now it says canter. So let's move up into a gallop. As you can see, that horse is really reaching with the front and back legs a lot further out. We're covering ground much faster, but it still says we're cantering. There are some more technical aspects what a canter versus a gallop is. We can go into that a little bit later, but right now we're just going to stick with that as our gallop. So now we're back to the canter because we're not going to run sassy to death. All right, so we've covered the 4 gaits. We're going to talk about transitions. A transition is just a change in gait. So for instance, if you speed up, you would call that a transition up. If you slow down, it's a transition down. Now, please note, it has to be a change in gait. It can't just be going at a slower trot. Like, we're still trotting, but we're going slower. Now we're walking, so we transitioned down. We're going to transition up into the trot. A slower trot. If we get a little faster, we're going faster, but we didn't transition. If that is making sense to everyone. So we're going to transition up into the canter. But we're going to come back and slow our canter down a little bit. Again, we're still cantering, but we're going slower. This is not a transition. Transition must be a change in gait. For instance, that canter down to the walk. All right, so we've talked about the gaits, transitions, on the rail, down the quarter line, down the center line. We're going to talk about how you know which direction to go. If your instructor is an English instructor in particular, they will probably tell you, everyone go out on the rail on the right rein. We are currently tracking on the right rein, and that is because the right side of our body and the horse's body is closest to the center of the arena. So we call that the inside of the horse and of the rider. The outside of the horse and rider faces the outside of the arena. So out past that fence line or rail. But the inside faces the inner center of the arena. So whatever direction they want you to go, they are referring to the inside of the horse's body and the rider's body. If my trainer had said, I want everyone to go out on the left rein, I need to change direction because I'm currently on the right rein and now I am on the left rein because my left side and the left side of the horse is facing the inside center of the arena. If you hear someone say change rein, that means change direction. So you're going on left rein right now. They say change rein, that means change it up, turn it around. We're gonna go on the right rein. So we're gonna go around the fence here and change our direction. Now, even though I'm not on the rail and I'm kind of going down the quarter line, I'm still tracking right because my inside shoulder, the inside part of the horse's body is facing the inside of the arena. My right shoulder and my right leg and the right side of the horse's body is facing the inside of the arena. So we are tracking right on the quarter line. Now, there is no specific rein that you're on when you're on the center line because you're in the middle of the arena. So let's, for example's sake, we're gonna trot over here. I'm going to turn down the center of the arena. Now, I can't actually go down the center of the arena because of the obstacles, but you can see we are in the center line of the arena. If I were to keep going straight, so I'm gonna turn the horse around as if I've just come from that direction straight down the arena, you might hear the term track right or track left. That just means go in that direction. So tracking right means I would turn my horse to the right and be on the right rein. Track left means I would turn my horse to the left and be on the left rein. So we're gonna track right off of the center line and staying on the rail. So I hope all of this is making sense. It's kind of a little convoluted to try to cover all of this at one time without you actually being on a horse and doing it, but anyhow. All right. Coming back to the gaits, we're going to talk about riding position and how that changes with the gaits. So I'm going to bring Sassy down to a walk right now. And you can see the rider's position is our knees are bent right at the kind of the edge of the saddle flap down there at the bottom. And our heels, well, our feet look pretty level, but the rider's heel looks like it's trying to point down a little bit. And you kind of look like you're squatting on the horse. Now, we don't have stirrups in this game yet, so normally the rider's foot would be in a stirrup to help stabilize their leg and keep them in this position. However, the stirrups can swing and they kind of move with the rider's leg, so you're not completely stationary. But this is called a riding position. You are just sitting in the saddle, your posture is good, you're sitting up straight, your elbows are bent, your hands are just over the horse's neck and in the center. And technically you should be holding reins, but we don't have reins yet. So this is the riding position. Just like your standard, no special effects, regular riding position. If you wanted to move up into a trot, riders post the trot. Depending on what you're doing, you may be sitting the trot, but you will begin posting when you start the trot. And that is kind of like an up and down, almost like squatting motion, but it's the horse's momentum that pushes you up and out of the saddle. You do still have to control your posting though. Many horses are responsive to how fast or how slow you will post, and they will change the speed of their trot to match that. So that is something you have to develop the muscles to be able to control your post in a way that would tell the horse go faster. You usually would post higher out of the saddle, make a much bigger post, and then post a little bit slower to tell your horse to slow back down until you sit your bottom in the saddle and we're down to the walk. Well, I think that concludes our first lesson talking about position within the arena, gaits, a little bit about riding position, and changing direction. So changing rein, tracking left, tracking right, going out on the left rein, going out on the right rein, all of that good stuff. So we are going to end it here for today. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you in lesson number 2. Bye!